I am Charles Orgbon III, and I'm a social impact strategist. When I was 12 years old, I started Greening Forward, a youth-driven, youth-imagined environmental organization that helps young people connect to resources that they'll need in order to create any kind of difference around some of the global challenges that we're facing in the 21st century. Actually, in February, I recently retired from my role with Greening Forward as CEO because I'm passing on the torch to a new era of leadership within the organization. But still, I bring 9 years of experience after having founded the organization to share with you some learned lessons that I have for you. Now, 2 days ago, I actually participated in my last class at the University of Georgia as an undergrad student. And this Friday, in 1 week, I'll be graduating with a degree in environmental science from the University of Georgia. Thereafter, I will take a 7-month sabbatical, learning Spanish, teaching English in South America and Europe, and then I will start a job in San Francisco doing sustainability consulting. Thank you. But this is where the journey started in some respects. Here in 2008, when I went to a school that required service. And so, as any normal 5th grader, I wanted to choose the project that was the easiest, that was going to give me the A, which is picking up litter after school, because I already stayed after school, and my principal gave me the gloves, he gave me the plastic bins. So I did get an A in that class. But what started for me was a series of questions. Why would someone blatantly destroy our planet? And also, it angered me that litter is completely preventable. So in the age of access, I went to the World Wide Web and type in anything into Google and you can find the answer. And so I learned the reality of some of our environmental challenges, that our oceans are under siege and wars are being fought over our most basic of natural resources. So, with simple resources such as the World Wide Web, I started a website called Greening Forward to talk about these environmental issues. Because we become an activist not by learning about something, but by doing something with the resources that we have. And so Greening Forward would grow from just me by myself to the 3 people you saw in the first picture to a network of 2,000 young people all across the country who care about environmental issues, with support from companies like Ben & Jerry's and Lush Cosmetics and State Farm, that we were able to provide experiences where young people could come together to find the training and resources, and then we can fund them to be able to take those ideas back to their communities and create projects that save water, that save electricity, plant trees, and restore habitats. To me, it's not surprising that we've had so much success in the last 9 years. Because when I think about our parents' generation, when scientists said, we can stop climate change if we wanted to, that we can slow down climate change. Whereas now, it's our generation that's realizing that climate change is here to stay, and it will be some equation of human suffering, mitigation, and adaptation. And the hope in that equation is how much we can do today to lessen the amount of human suffering that will happen tomorrow. So young people have grown up with this reality. We have grown up with this reality of climate change. And so I get to work with a network of young people who are excited to be a part of the solution. Here's a glimpse into one of the conferences we most recently ran with the New York City Department of Education.
Time don't make no pleasure without pain, or love without heartbreak, perspective, reflections.
Young people are critical. We really need the next generation of leaders to have a firm foundation when it comes to climate change. At the end of the day, we need to have, you're going to be the ones that are going to be facing the challenges of the 21st century, have to do the real work when it comes to combating climate change, and not just climate change, but real health outcomes in communities.
Greening Forward specifically, I mean, it's a fantastic example of an organization that is pushing an organization like the Department of Education in New York City to connect better to our schools for environmental work, projects, programs, people, right? Greening Forward is giving the Department of Education students an opportunity to bring what might be seedlings of passion in them. It's helping to grow those, and it's helping them to identify it within themselves and then connect to larger networks. So we need organizations like Greening Forward.
People who've attended IYUIS and the Greening Forward team, who inspired me and have shown me that I can do what I want, make my ideas a reality. I wouldn't have come if it wasn't for Cindy. I wouldn't have been inspired if it wasn't for Charles. And I wouldn't have thought of my new idea for the grant proposal without Jawari. For that, I thank you guys.
Hearts like these, oh, and love like this, the stars line in the sky.
So I don't get to do this work alone. I get to do this work with a brilliant team of young people. That's me to the right, not the person wearing the cape. But doing this conference really inspired students in New York City particularly to think about what was possible for them. They said, here are our peers who've traveled from all across the country to come to our city to plan this conference. We can do this ourselves. We can do this too. They saw what was possible for them. And so Landscape Architecture magazine wrote a really interesting article about how that is so critical for young people to do, to find that inspiration from other young people. Actually, I think my story and journey with Greening Forward has a lot to do with this question of realizing what's possible. Because I took advantage of an opportunity in my life to create some possibility in my life. As a young black male in Florence, South Carolina, many people found creative ways when I was 12 years old to ask, why did I start Greening Forward? How did I start Greening Forward? And really, it wasn't until recently that I started really telling the full timeline, the full story. Because I think the journey really starts when I was 3 years old and my mother and my father divorced. And thereafter, my mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Recognizing my mother's challenges, my grandmother raised me for a significant portion of my life. My grandmother was a middle school principal. She grew up in Jim Crow, South Carolina. She grew up picking tobacco and vowed she'll never do that again, and the only way to do that was to get an education. I remember every night, and still to this day, that she reads the newspaper every day. how she sensed that it was necessary to build within me a sense of curiosity about the world, a sense of wonder about the world, and a commitment to lifelong learning. My grandmother became an educator, and I realized that in her state, in the 60s, blacks weren't allowed admittance into the universities that offered STEM degrees, that she couldn't even be a scientist or study science the way that I have in my undergraduate studies. So I take that inspiration with me when I think about my activism today. Eventually, an argument between my mother and my grandmother led me to pack all of my things in 30-gallon trash bags, and my mother and I hauled down to Charleston, South Carolina, where my mother said there'll be more opportunities. And so there, my mother, who loved me, she enrolled me into a private Catholic school, even though she could only afford the first tuition payment, because she wanted to keep me out of a failing school district. And this school was so generous to me that they never kicked me out, because my mother's mental illness meant that keeping a job was very difficult, that paying the bills and keeping the lights on were really difficult. And sometimes the cupboards at home were empty. And so I'd have to go to school, and the school would usually make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But let me let you in on a secret. Sometimes, because lunches were pre-ordered for those that didn't bring their own lunch to school, that if a kid went home sick, I got to take their chicken nuggets. So Billy goes home because he has diarrhea. Hallelujah. I'm taking your chicken nuggets. Something that my grandmother taught me was that life is a game of choices. And I like to add, well, how do I know what choice to choose? And so I say, choose the choice that gives you the most choices. Choose the choice that gives you the most choices. That I couldn't change my mother's mental health, and I couldn't change some of those life circumstances, but I was tempted with community service at an early age and chose to see possibility and chose to see opportunity. And that chaos in my life came at a very interesting time where I had that choice. A choice that I saw also as an opportunity to channel my unbounded energy, my unbounded excitement to create my own destiny. And Greening Forward became that possibility and that opportunity. And because I chose that, I'm here before you today. That I've traveled to South Africa lecturing on these issues. That I've helped Chilean school systems integrate environmental education into their curriculum. And I also had the opportunity to go to the Arctic. When I decided to set forth on an Arctic science expedition, I already knew that climate change existed and have been advocating for the planet in so many ways. I wanted to experience the science myself, so I decided to visit Churchill with leading scientists and citizen activists in pristine, unadulterated wilderness so that I could contribute to the research that indicates that permafrost is thawing, that tracks how trees are able to germinate farther north due to changing climate, and that predicts an ice-free summer Arctic by 2030. In fact, I have had an understanding of the science since the 5th grade.
Well, News 13 has been telling you about little things that you can do to protect the environment, and even the members of the youngest generation realize how they can make a difference in the world.
Most 7th graders keep busy with English, math, and social studies. But Charles Orgbon III adds another favorite subject.
Definitely recycling.
He spends much of his spare time learning how to live a more environmentally friendly life.
But now I have a greater understanding of climate science so that I'm able to better advocate for our fragile planet to communities across the globe. Ultimately, people must understand that it's the actions that happen every day in more temperate regions that directly impacts the polar bear that drowns or the Inuit that falls through a thawing ice sheet. So, I hope that you choose to accept the call to action to bring forth solutions to climate change.